Commander Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the human flagship Unity, watching the massive space station grow larger on the view screen. Nexus Prime was the biggest structure humans had ever seen. It was home to the Galactic Council, where 57 different alien species made decisions that affected billions of lives across the galaxy. Today was supposed to be the most important day in human history. After 30 years of proving themselves as peaceful explorers and traders, humanity was finally going to become a full member of the Galactic Council. Hyun-woo had spent months preparing for this moment. His uniform was perfect, his speech was ready, and his heart was full of hope for the future. "Sir, we're getting signals from the other human ships," said Lieutenant Bo-Ram from her station. "Everyone is ready for the ceremony." Hyun-woo smiled. Behind him flew 12 other human vessels, carrying diplomats, scientists, and cultural representatives from every nation on Earth. They had brought gifts, art, music, and technology to share with their new galactic neighbors. Earth's children were finally going to take their place among the stars as equals. "Open a channel to Captain Ji-hai," Hyun-woo ordered. The face of Captain Ji-hai appeared on the screen. She was young for a starship captain, only 35, but she had proven herself many times over. Her ship, Defiance, was one of the newer vessels in the human fleet. Right now, it was positioned far behind the main group, almost invisible against the dark space. "Hyun-woo, are you ready for this?" Ji-hai asked with a grin. "I've been ready my whole life," he replied. "My grandfather used to tell me stories about the first time humans met aliens. He said it would change everything. I never imagined I'd be the one standing here today." "The Vorthak delegation sent us another message of support," Ji-hai said. "They're really excited about today. Ambassador Kreltos says humanity has the potential to be one of the greatest species in the galaxy." Hyun-woo nodded. The Vorthak had been humanity's first alien friends. When human explorers first reached the edge of Vorthak space 28 years ago, instead of fighting, both species had chosen to talk. The Vorthak were tall, gray-skinned beings with 4 arms and gentle voices. They had taught humans how to improve their faster-than-light travel, shared maps of safe routes through space, and introduced them to other species. "The Kamari are also sending good wishes," Bo-Ram added, "and the Silvani Science Council wants to start 3 new research projects with our universities next month." The Kamari were humanity's biggest trading partners. They looked like large, furry bears, but were incredibly smart when it came to business and manufacturing. The Silvani were thin, elegant beings with pale blue skin who loved learning and discovering new things. Over the years, human scientists had worked with them on dozens of projects. "Everything is perfect," Hyun-woo said. "Signal the dock. We're ready to begin." The human ships moved into formation around Nexus Prime. The space station was so big, it had its own gravity and atmosphere. Ships from dozens of species were docked around it, creating a beautiful display of different technologies and designs. Hyun-woo could see Vorthak vessels with their smooth, curved hulls, Kamari trade ships covered in cargo pods, and the graceful Silvani science vessels that looked more like works of art than spaceships. "Sir," called out Ensign Tae-young from the communications station. "We're getting the signal from the council. They're ready for us." Hyun-woo straightened his uniform one last time. "This is it, everyone. Today, humanity joins the galaxy as equals." The docking process took an hour. The human delegation was met by representatives from many species, all offering congratulations and friendship. Ambassador Kreltos of the Vorthak was there, his 4 arms spread wide in the traditional greeting. The Kamari Trade Minister, a massive being covered in golden fur, rumbled words of welcome. Even the usually quiet Silvani had sent their highest-ranking scientist to greet the humans. "Welcome, friends," Kreltos said in perfect English. The Vorthak had been the first species to learn human languages. Today will be remembered forever. Hyun-woo felt a warm feeling in his chest. These beings had become like family to humanity. They had guided Earth's children through their first steps into the larger universe. Without their help, humans might still be struggling to travel between star systems. The delegation made its way through the station's corridors. Nexus Prime was even more amazing inside than outside. The walls were made of some kind of living crystal that changed colors based on the emotions of people nearby. Right now, they glowed with warm yellows and blues, reflecting the happiness and excitement everyone felt. "The ceremony will begin in 1 hour," Kreltos explained. "All 57 species will vote on humanity's membership. It is, of course, just a formality. Everyone knows the vote will be unanimous in your favor." They reached the Great Council Chamber, a vast circular room with seats for thousands of representatives. In the center was a platform where the candidate species would stand while the vote took place. Hyunwoo had seen pictures of this room, but being here in person was overwhelming. This was where the biggest decisions in galactic history had been made. Wars had been prevented here. Trade agreements had been signed, and new species had been welcomed into the community of intelligent life. "I can't believe we're really here," whispered Dr. Sunmi, one of the human scientists. "My daughter is watching this broadcast on Earth right now. She's only 7 years old, but she'll remember this day for the rest of her life." The hour passed quickly. Representatives from dozens of species filed into the chamber, taking their seats. Hyunwoo recognized many of them from diplomatic meetings over the years. These beings had become friends, colleagues, and partners with humanity. Some had visited Earth and walked among humans in the great cities. Others had hosted human tourists and students on their worlds. When the time came, Hyunwoo and the other human representatives took their place on the central platform. The chamber fell silent. At the back of the room, news cameras from dozens of worlds recorded every moment. This was being broadcast live across the entire galaxy. The council speaker, an ancient being from the Zelnari species, stood up. The Zelnari were one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy, and they had led the council for over 1,000 years. "Representatives of the galaxy," the speaker said, in a voice that seemed to echo from everywhere at once. "Today we gather to vote on the membership of the species known as humanity. They have been our friends, our partners, and our students for 30 years. They have proven themselves to be intelligent, creative, and peaceful. They have shared their knowledge freely and have shown respect for all life." Hyunwoo felt his heart racing. This was it. In a few minutes, humanity would officially be part of the galactic community. However, the speaker continued, and Hyunwoo felt a chill run down his spine. Recent discussions among the council members have raised certain concerns. Concerns? What concerns? Hyunwoo looked around the chamber, but the alien faces were impossible to read. Even Kreltos, who had been so friendly just hours ago, was looking away. "The species known as humanity has shown remarkable abilities in a very short time," the speaker went on. "Their technology advances faster than any species we have ever encountered. Their population grows quickly. Their influence spreads rapidly among other species. Some among us have begun to question whether such rapid development is safe." Safe? Hyunwoo couldn't believe what he was hearing. Humanity had never shown any signs of aggression toward other species. Every first contact had been peaceful. Every agreement had been honored. Every conflict had been resolved through talking, not fighting. "Furthermore," the speaker said, "there are reports that some species have begun to adopt human ideas and customs. This level of cultural influence is unprecedented and potentially dangerous to the stability of our civilization." Dr. Sunmi grabbed Hyunwoo's arm. "What is happening?" she whispered. "This can't be real." The speaker raised one of their many arms. "Therefore, the Council has reached a decision. For the safety and stability of all galactic civilization, the species known as humanity cannot be granted membership in the Galactic Council. Instead, they must be placed under the protection and guidance of established species." The words hit Hyunwoo like a physical blow. Protection and guidance. That was the language used for primitive species that weren't ready for independence. It was the language used for civilizations that needed to be controlled. "The vote is called," the speaker announced. "All in favor of placing humanity under protective custody?" One by one, every species in the chamber raised their voting devices. The Vorthak, who had been humanity's first friends. The Kamari, who had traded with Earth for decades. The Silvani, who had worked alongside human scientists. Even species that humans had helped. Species that owed their current prosperity to human innovations and generosity. 57 votes. All in favor. Not a single species voted to defend humanity's freedom. Hyunwoo felt the world spinning around him. This couldn't be happening. These were friends, allies, partners. They had worked together, laughed together, built a better future together. "The vote is unanimous," the speaker declared. "Humanity is hereby declared a protected species under galactic law. Human vessels will be escorted to designated worlds where they will be cared for and guided by their assigned protector species." Through the viewing windows of the council chamber, Hyunwoo could see ships moving. Dozens of alien warships were surrounding the human vessels. The trap had been perfectly planned, but Captain Ji-Hai's ship, Defiance, was nowhere to be seen. The chamber erupted into chaos as the human delegation realized what was happening. But it was too late. Security forces were already moving in, their weapons drawn. The greatest betrayal in human history was complete. Outside, the first shots were being fired at human ships that tried to run. Minho's hands were bleeding again. The crystal formations deep in the Corveth mines were sharp enough to cut through the thin gloves the Vorthak guards gave him. But complaining would only earn him another shock from the control collar around his neck. So he kept digging. 15 years had passed since the Great Betrayal. 15 years since the galaxy had decided that humanity was too dangerous to remain free. Minho had been 22 then, fresh out of university with dreams of becoming an engineer. Now he was 37, and his dreams had been ground down to dust in the endless tunnels beneath Corveth's surface. "Move faster, human," growled the Vorthak overseer. The alien's 4 arms made him look like some kind of mechanical spider. As he pointed at Minho with one hand while adjusting his shock remote with another. "The energy quotas must be met." Minho nodded and returned to his work. The crystals he was mining would power Vorthak ships and cities, the same ships that had surrounded Earth all those years ago, the same cities where Vorthak families lived, in comfort while humans died in dark holes underground. He remembered his sister Yoonji. She had been with him on the transport ship when they were captured. The Vorthak had separated them at the processing center, sending him to the mines and her to somewhere else. He didn't know where. He tried not to think about it, because thinking about Yoonji made him want to do something stupid, like attack, a guard, or try to escape. And stupid actions led to death. The work shift lasted 14 hours. When it was over, Minho and the other human miners were herded back to their sleeping quarters. The room was a long, low building with rows of metal bunks. 200 humans lived here, all of them mining slaves. They were fed once a day with a gray paste that tasted like nothing and gave them just enough energy to keep working. Minho collapsed onto his bunk and closed his eyes. His back ached from bending over all day. His hands burned from the crystal cuts. But worst of all was the emptiness in his chest where hope used to be. "Minho," whispered a voice from the next bunk. It was Chang Su, an older man who had been here since the beginning. "Did you hear the new rumors?" "What rumors?" Minho asked without opening his eyes. The guards were talking. "They said there's been trouble on the Kamari worlds. Some kind of uprising." Minho opened his eyes. "Human uprising?" "Maybe. They've increased security here too. More guards, more patrols." Minho felt something stir in his chest. Not hope exactly, but something close to it. "Do you think it's real?" Chang-Su was quiet for a moment. I think someone, somewhere, is still fighting. Far across the galaxy, So Young sat in her laboratory on the Silvani homeworld of Thessia. To anyone watching, she looked like the perfect slave scientist. She wore the simple gray robes that marked her as property of the Silvani Research Institute. Her collar was smaller and more elegant than the ones used on manual laborers, but it was still a collar. She worked quietly at her desk, designing new weapons systems for her masters. But appearances could be deceiving. So Young had been one of Earth's top military engineers before the betrayal. The Silvani had specifically requested her because of her expertise in defensive systems. They wanted her to design better shields and armor for their ships. What they didn't know was that every system she created had a hidden weakness built into it. "Slave So Young," called Master Veltar from across the laboratory. The Silvani were tall and graceful, with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed to see everything. "Show me your progress on the new shield generators." So Young stood and bowed as she had been trained. "Yes, Master. The new designs are 30% more efficient than the previous models." She activated her workstation's holographic display. The shield generator design appeared in the air, rotating slowly to show all its components. It looked perfect. The Silvani had been using her designs for 10 years now, and they had never suspected anything. "Excellent work," Veltar said with satisfaction. "Begin production immediately. We will need 5,000 units for the fleet expansion." So Young bowed again. "Of course, Master." Inside, she smiled. 5,000 shield generators, all with the same hidden flaw, all waiting for the right signal to shut down at exactly the wrong moment. The Silvani thought they were getting stronger, but really they were just making themselves more vulnerable. She returned to her desk and began working on her next project, a new type of missile guidance system. Like everything else she designed, it would work perfectly until someone sent the right shutdown code. Then every missile would turn around and target the ship that fired it. So Young had lost track of how many flawed weapons she had given to her masters over the years. Hundreds, maybe thousands of systems that looked perfect but contained hidden kill switches. She was building an army of sleeping weapons, all waiting for the day when someone would wake them up. The hardest part was not knowing if that day would ever come. On the prison world of Terminus, Jae-min prepared for another fight. The arena was a massive circular pit surrounded by thousands of cheering aliens. They had come from all over the galaxy to watch humans kill each other for entertainment. Jae-min was 25 years old and had been fighting for 8 years. He had been 13 when the betrayal happened, just a child when the aliens decided that humans made good gladiators. Now, he was one of the best fighters in the arena, which meant he was one of the few who had survived this long. "Today you fight the Krex champion," announced the arena master, a fat Kamari who made money by betting on the matches. "If you win, you get extra food for a week. If you lose..." He didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what happened to losers. Jae-min nodded and picked up his weapons. A short sword and a small shield, both made of cheap metal that would break after a few good hits. The aliens didn't want the fights to end too quickly. As he walked into the arena, Jae-min could hear the crowd roaring. Thousands of voices calling for blood, for death, for entertainment. These same aliens had once pretended to be humanity's friends. Now they cheered while humans died for fun. But Jae-min had learned something important during his years in the arena. The aliens thought they were breaking human spirit by making them fight each other. Instead, they were creating warriors. Every human who survived the arena became harder, faster, and more dangerous. They were accidentally training an army. The Krex champion was waiting for him in the center of the pit. The Krex were large insect-like beings with natural armor and 4 fighting arms. This one was bigger than most, with scars that showed he had won many battles. The fight began with a sound like thunder. The Kreks moved fast for something so big, swinging all four arms in a pattern that would have killed most opponents. But Jamin had fought Kreks before. He knew their weaknesses. He dodged the first attack and rolled under the second. His sword found the gap between armor plates just below the creature's arm. The Kreks screamed and stumbled backward. The crowd was on its feet now, shouting and cheering. They loved violence, no matter who was delivering it. Jamin pressed his attack. The Kreks was wounded but still dangerous. It caught him with one arm and threw him across the arena. Jamin hit the wall hard and felt something crack in his ribs. But pain was an old friend by now. He got up and charged again. The fight lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, the Kreks champion was dead and Jamin was still standing. The crowd went wild, throwing money and flowers into the arena. They loved him for his skill, even though he was just a slave to them. As the guards led him back to his cell, Jamin passed a group of new human prisoners. They looked terrified and hopeless, just like he had 8 years ago. "Listen to me," he whispered to them as he passed. "Survive. Get stronger. Someone is coming for us." One of the new prisoners, a young woman, looked up at him. "How do you know?" Jamin touched his chest, where a small scar marked his skin. It was shaped like the letter H, carved there by another gladiator before he died. All the surviving arena fighters had the same mark. It was a reminder, a promise, a prayer. "Because we're human," he said, "and humans don't give up." That night, in cells and mines and laboratories across the galaxy, millions of humans went to sleep carrying the same secret hope. They had been scattered across 1,000 worlds, treated like animals, worked like machines, and killed for sport. But they all remembered the same thing. They were human, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, other humans were still free, still fighting, still coming. The aliens had made a mistake 15 years ago. They thought that scattering humanity would make them weak. Instead, they had spread human determination across the entire galaxy. Every world now had humans on it. Every species now depended on human slaves to do their work. The galaxy had created its own downfall. They just didn't know it yet. Admiral Su Jin stood on the bridge of the hidden space station, watching through the massive viewports as human ships moved like ghosts through the asteroid field. The station had no name, at least not one that appeared on any alien star charts. To the humans who lived here, it was simply called Haven. Haven had been built inside a massive asteroid, carved out over 20 years by human refugees who had escaped the Great Betrayal. From the outside, it looked like just another space rock floating in the emptiness between star systems. But inside, it housed over 2 million free humans and the largest fleet of starships in the galaxy. Su Jin was 38 years old, born just 3 years before the betrayal. She was the daughter of Captain Ji Hai, the woman who had escaped the trap at Nexus Prime all those years ago. Su Jin had grown up hearing stories about Earth's green hills and blue oceans, about cities, full of humans living free under open skies. She had never seen any of those things herself, but she dreamed about them every night. "Admiral," called Commander Wu Jin from his station, "the scout ships are reporting back from Sector 7. They've confirmed the location of another slave. World." Su Jin walked over to the central command table where a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy hung in the air. Red dots marked the known locations of human slave populations. There were over 3,000 red dots now, scattered across hundreds of star systems. Each dot represented thousands of enslaved humans, maybe millions. "How many are we talking?" "About?" she asked. "Best estimate is around 50,000 humans on the Kamari industrial world of Vextar," Wu Jin replied. "They're being used in the manufacturing plants that build ships for the Kamari trade fleet." Su Jin nodded and marked the location on her personal data pad. 50,000 more humans who needed to be freed. The list kept getting longer every year as they discovered new slave worlds, but she refused to give up on any of them. "Ma'am," said Lieutenant Kyung-soo from the communications station. Dr. Young-sik is requesting to see you in Laboratory 7. He says it's urgent. Soo-jin made her way through the corridors of Haven. The asteroid base was huge, but it always felt crowded. Every available space had been converted into living quarters, workshops, or training facilities. Children who had been born here ran through the hallways, playing games and laughing. It was one of the few sounds that made Soo-jin smile. At least the young ones still knew how to be happy. Laboratory 7 was deep in the center of the asteroid, where the most secret projects were kept. Dr. Young-sik had been working here for 15 years, ever since he escaped from a Sylvani research facility. He was one of the most brilliant engineers humanity had ever produced, and he had been using that brilliance to give them an edge in the coming war. Admiral, Young-sik said as she entered the lab. He was standing next to what looked like a normal human starship, but Soo-jin could see that something was different about it. The hull seemed to shimmer slightly, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. "What am I looking at, Doctor?" she asked. Young-sik grinned like a child with a new toy. "This is the prototype for what I'm calling a phase ship. Watch this," he pressed a button on his control panel. The ship began to fade, becoming more and more transparent until it disappeared completely. Even though Soo-jin knew it was still there, her eyes couldn't see it. "It's not invisible," Young-sik explained. "It's actually shifting into a parallel dimension, just slightly out of phase with normal space. Alien sensors can't detect it because technically it's not in the same reality as them. But it can still move around and observe everything." Soo-jin felt her heart racing. This could change everything. "How many can you build?" "With our current resources, maybe 50 phase ships. But Admiral, this is just the beginning. I've also been working on improvements to alien technology we've captured over the years. Their weapons, their shields, their engines. I've been making them better, much better." Young-sik led her to another section of the lab where weapons and equipment were displayed on tables. "These are Vorthak plasma rifles, but I've increased their power output by 300%. These are Kamari shield generators that can now stop twice as much damage. And these," he said, pointing to a rack of devices that looked like metal discs, "are something completely new." "What do they do?" "They're virus bombs. When you activate one near any alien computer system, it uploads a program that gives us complete control over their technology, ships, space stations, planetary defense grids, everything." Soo-jin picked up one of the discs. It was small enough to hide in her hand. "How long have you been working on these?" 10 years, Young-sik said. "I've been preparing for the day when we finally strike back. The aliens think they're so advanced, but they've become lazy. They rely too much on automated systems, and they never change their security codes. These devices will turn their own technology against them." Before Soo-jin could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the laboratory. It was the signal that meant someone important had returned to Haven. Soo-jin knew who it had to be. She made her way to the main docking bay where a crowd was already gathering. A single human ship had just landed, its hull scarred and damaged, from what looked like a difficult journey. The airlock opened, and out stepped a man Soo-jin hadn't seen in 5 years. Do-hyun looked older than his 43 years. His hair was gray, his face was lined with scars, and his eyes held the weight of terrible knowledge. He had spent the last 20 years living among the aliens, pretending to be a broken slave while secretly gathering intelligence for the human resistance. "Admiral," he said as he approached. His voice was tired but steady. "I have a full report on enemy positions, fleet strengths, and defensive capabilities. But first, there's something else you need to know." Soo-jin led him to a private briefing room where they could talk without being overheard. Do-hyun sat down heavily in a chair and closed his eyes for a moment before speaking. "I've found the location of the Dominion Council," he said quietly. Soo-jin felt her breath catch. The Dominion Council was the secret group of alien leaders who had planned the Great Betrayal. For 20 years, no one had known who they were or where they met. They were the real enemy, the ones who had convinced 57 species to turn against humanity. "Where?" she asked. "A hidden base in the void sector, beyond the edge of known space. I managed to infiltrate one of their meetings." "Admiral what?" "I saw there." Do-hyun paused and shook his head. "They're not just keeping humans as slaves, they're experimenting on us, trying to breed us like animals to create better workers." The room seemed to spin around Soo-jin. She had known that humans were being treated badly, but this was worse than anything she had imagined. "There's more," Do-hyun continued. "I met another human there, a woman named Hae-won, who had escaped from one of their breeding facilities. The things she told me, Admiral, they have children. Human children who have never seen the sky, never felt grass, never known anything except cages and laboratories." Soo-jin stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see human ships, preparing for training exercises. These were her people, the last free humans in the galaxy. She had spent her entire life preparing to lead them in the fight to liberate their enslaved brothers and sisters. But now she realized the fight was about something even more important. "How? Many children?" she asked without turning around. "Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. Hae-won says there are breeding facilities on at least a dozen worlds." Soo-jin turned back to face Do-hyun. "Then we're not waiting any longer. How soon can we be ready?" "Our ships are prepared," Do-hyun said. "Our weapons are ready. Our people have been training for this their entire lives. But Admiral, this won't just be a rescue mission. Once we start, there's no going back. The aliens will fight with everything they have." "Good," Soo-jin said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with determination. "Because so will we." She activated the communication system that connected to every part of Haven. Her voice echoed through the corridors where 2 million humans lived and worked and dreamed of freedom. "Attention all personnel. This is Admiral Soo-jin. After 20 years of preparation, the time has come. Tomorrow we begin Operation Prometheus. We're going to bring our people home." Throughout Haven, humans stopped what they were doing and listened. In the training areas, soldiers checked their weapons. In the shipyards, engineers ran final tests on their vessels. In the schools, teachers told children that soon they might see the Earth their grandparents had described. The hidden flame that had burned in secret for 20 years was about to become a fire that would light up the entire galaxy. Tae-ho had been pretending to be broken for 12 years. Every morning, he shuffled to his workstation in the weapons factory on Moltar like a man who had given up all hope. He kept his eyes down, spoke only when spoken to, and worked at exactly the pace that kept him alive but not fast enough to draw attention. The Vorthak guards thought he was the perfect slave. Quiet, obedient, and completely harmless. They had no idea that every night for the past 5 years, Tae-ho had been removing tiny components from the weapons he helped build and hiding them in secret locations throughout the factory. Today was different. Today, Tae-ho felt a small device in his pocket vibrate 3 times. The signal he had been waiting for his entire adult life. Operation Prometheus had begun. He looked around the factory floor where 300 humans worked alongside alien machinery. Most of them had no idea what was about to happen, but scattered among them were others like him. Sleeper agents who had been placed here years ago, waiting for this moment. Tae-ho caught the eye of Jin-ae, a woman who worked at the plasma forge station. She gave him the smallest nod. Across the room, Nam-gil was already moving toward his position near the power core. Everything was falling into place. The beauty of their plan was its simplicity. The weapons components Tae-ho had been stealing weren't random pieces. Over the years, he had carefully collected everything needed to build a dozen high-powered explosive devices. The factory that had used human labor to build weapons for the Vorthak military was about to become the weapon that destroyed itself. At exactly noon, Tejo activated the first bomb. The explosion tore through the main assembly line, sending alien guards flying and destroying millions of credits worth of military equipment. Before the Vorthak could react, Jin'e set off the second bomb at the plasma forge. The chain reaction lit up the sky as stored energy weapons began exploding like fireworks. But the real surprise came when Namgil reached the factory's communication center. Instead of destroying it, he activated a device that Dr. Young-sik had designed specifically for this moment. Every Vorthak computer system in the factory suddenly displayed the same message in perfect Vorthak script. Humanity remembers. Humanity returns. Humanity will have justice. Similar scenes were playing out on dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Sleeper agents who had been placed years earlier were all activating at the same time, turning the aliens' own infrastructure against them. On Kepler Station, the massive orbital defense platform that protected the Kamari homeworld, Insu and his team of domesticated humans were revealing their true nature. For 8 years, Insu had worked as a maintenance technician, quietly learning every system on the station. The Kamari trusted him completely. After all, what could one broken human do against a space station the size of a city? They were about to find out. Insu made his way to the Central Command Center, carrying a toolkit that looked perfectly normal. Hidden inside were the virus bombs that Dr. Young-sik had created. The Kamari security guards barely looked at him as he passed. He was just another slave, invisible and harmless. The command center controlled everything: the station's massive defense guns, the shield generators, the docking bay security systems, and most importantly, the traffic control system that guided ships safely to and from the planet below. Insu plugged his first virus bomb into a data port and watched as the alien computer systems began turning against their masters. One by one, the defense guns stopped pointing outward toward space and started pointing inward toward the Kamari fleet. "What is happening?" shouted the Kamari station commander as alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Insu smiled for the first time in 8 years. Something you should have expected a long time ago. The first salvo from the defense guns tore through 6 Kamari warships before they could raise their shields. The ships that tried to escape found their navigation systems had been corrupted, sending them crashing into each other or spinning helplessly through space. But Insu wasn't finished. He activated his second virus bomb and uploaded it into the planetary communication network. Within minutes, every Kamari on the planet below received the same message. Your slaves are no longer your slaves. Your protectors are no longer your protectors. Today, humanity takes back what you stole. Meanwhile, on the Silvani homeworld of Thessia, So-Young was making her final contribution to the liberation. For 15 years, she had been designing weapons with hidden flaws, waiting for this moment. Now she sat in her laboratory, typing commands into her computer with hands that shook with excitement rather than fear. Every weapon system she had ever designed contained a hidden backdoor. Every shield generator, every missile guidance system, every defensive satellite orbiting Silvani worlds had a secret shutdown code built into its programming. With a few keystrokes, So-Young activated them all. Across the Silvani Empire, ships suddenly found their weapons turning against them. Shields flickered and died at the worst possible moments. Defense satellites began targeting the very cities they were supposed to protect. The elegant, graceful Silvani fleet became a confused mass of disabled ships floating helplessly in space. Master Veltar burst into the laboratory just as So-Young finished uploading the final shutdown commands. "Slave, what have you done?" So-Young stood up slowly and removed the collar from around her neck. The device that had marked her as property for 15 years fell to the floor with a satisfying clatter. "My name is Dr. So-Young," she said calmly. "I was one of Earth's top military engineers before you enslaved my people. For 15 years, I've been building weapons for you. What I didn't tell you is that I was also building their weaknesses." Veltar's large eyes went wide with understanding. You sabotaged everything? Everything, So-Young confirmed. Every shield, every weapon, every defense system I've touched in the last 15 years. Your entire military is falling apart right now, and it's all because you trusted a human slave to make you stronger. But the most crucial mission was happening in the hidden facility where human children were, being bred like animals. Dongwook led a strike team of 20 fighters through the corridors of the Dominion Breeding Center, their hearts burning with rage at what they found. The facility was built like a factory, but instead of manufacturing products, it was manufacturing people. Thousands of human children lived in small rooms, never seeing sunlight, never playing outside, never knowing that there was a whole universe beyond the walls of their prison. "Daddy, who are you?" asked a little girl as Dongwook's team broke down the door to her room. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, with pale skin and large eyes that had never seen a real sky. Dongwook knelt down and tried to keep his voice steady. "I'm someone who's going to take you home, little one. Do you know what home means?" The girl shook her head. She had been born in this facility and had never known anything else existed. Home is a place where children play and laugh and run under blue skies, Dongwook said gently. "Home is where you're safe and loved and free, and that's where we're taking you." Room by room, corridor by corridor, Dongwook's team found more children. Hundreds of them, ranging in age from babies to teenagers. All of them had been stolen from their families or bred in captivity. All of them had been told that this was their entire world. The alien scientists who ran the facility tried to stop the rescue, but they were no match for humans fighting to save their own children. Some of the scientists begged for mercy. Others tried to destroy their research before it could be captured. Dongwook showed them the same mercy they had shown to human children. None. As the strike teams completed their missions across the galaxy, the aliens began to realize what was happening. This wasn't just a slave rebellion. This was a coordinated military operation that had been planned for years. The humans they thought were broken and harmless had been preparing for this moment. Emergency broadcasts went out from alien homeworlds, calling for help, warning that the humans were somehow fighting back. But many of the messages never reached their destinations. Human agents had infiltrated communication networks, jamming signals and spreading confusion. The galaxy that had once stood united against humanity was now in chaos. Ships couldn't trust their own weapons, planets couldn't rely on their own defenses, and everywhere, the humans they had enslaved were rising up with a fury that 20 years of oppression had only made stronger. On Haven, Admiral Su Jin watched the reports coming in from across the galaxy. Phase ships invisible to alien sensors brought news of successful strikes, liberated populations, and enemy forces in complete disarray. "Admiral," reported Commander Wu Jin, "Phase 1 is complete. All primary targets have been neutralized. Our people are free and fighting." Su Jin nodded. "Then it's time for Phase 2. Prepare the main fleet. We're going to visit our old friends and remind them what happens when you betray humanity." The hidden flame had become a wildfire, and it was spreading fast. Admiral Su Jin stood on the bridge of her flagship Retribution as it emerged from phase space above the Vorthak homeworld. Around her, 50 phantom ships materialized out of nothing, their hulls shimmering as they returned to normal reality. The Vorthak had no warning, no time to prepare. One moment their skies were empty, the next they were filled with human warships. "Admiral," reported Captain Dong Min from the tactical station, "all ships are in position. The Vorthak defense fleet is scrambling to respond, but their weapons systems are still compromised from yesterday's virus attacks." Su Jin watched the view screen as Vorthak ships tried desperately to form defensive lines. Their movements were clumsy and confused. Many of their vessels were operating on backup systems. their main computers still infected with Dr. Young-Sik's viruses. It would have been almost funny if Su-Jin could forget what these beings had done to her people. "Open a channel to the planet," she ordered. The face of High Commander Krelvash appeared on the screen. He was the current leader of the Vorthak Empire, but Su-Jin recognized him as one of the advisors who had stood beside Ambassador Kreltos 20 years ago during the Great Betrayal. "Human ships," Krelvash said, his four arms spread in what might have been a gesture of surrender or supplication. "We can negotiate. There is no need for violence." "Negotiate?" Su-Jin's voice was calm, but her eyes were cold as winter stars. "The same way you negotiated with Commander Hunwoo 20 years ago? The same way you negotiated with the millions of humans you've worked to death in your mines?" "That was different," Krelvash protested. "The Council decided that humanity needed guidance. We were protecting the galaxy." "Protecting the galaxy from what? From people who wanted to be your friends?" Su-Jin leaned forward in her command chair. "High Commander, I'm going to give you the same choice you gave us 20 years ago. Surrender unconditionally and face trial for your crimes, or resist and face the consequences. You cannot seriously expect us to surrender our entire civilization to a handful of escaped slaves." Su-Jin smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Watch us." She cut the communication and turned to her weapons officer. "Target their orbital shipyards first, then their military bases. Avoid civilian areas, but make sure they understand that resistance is futile." The human ships opened fire with weapons that were far more advanced than anything the Vorthak had ever seen. Dr. Young-Sik had spent 20 years improving alien technology, and the results were devastating. Vorthak shields that should have been impenetrable crumbled under the assault. Ships that had ruled the space lanes for centuries were torn apart like paper. But the real shock came when the Vorthak tried to return fire. Their own weapons turned against them, targeting their allies instead of the human ships. Orbital defense platforms that should have been protecting the planet began bombarding Vorthak military installations. "How is this possible?" Krelvash's voice crackled over the emergency frequencies. 20 years? Su-Jin replied on an open channel that every Vorthak could hear. 20 years you used our people as slaves. 20 years you thought we were broken. You never realized that every human you enslaved was gathering intelligence, learning your weaknesses, preparing for this day. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other battles were raging. Wu Jin, who now called himself the Liberator, led a massive human fleet toward the Kamari trade routes. The furry, bear-like aliens had grown rich by using human slave labor in their factories. Now they were about to learn that wealth meant nothing when your workers turned against you. The Kamari had always prided themselves on being practical business people. When Wu Jin's fleet appeared in their space, they immediately tried to negotiate. "Human Commander," transmitted Trademaster Velkoth from his flagship. "Surely we can reach some kind of agreement. The Kamari Empire is prepared to offer substantial compensation for any inconvenience our past policies may have caused." Wu Jin's response was to broadcast footage from the liberated Kamari factories. The images showed human workers living in cages, children as young as 10 operating dangerous machinery, and mass graves where the bodies of dead slaves had been dumped. "Inconvenience?" Wu Jin's voice carried all the rage of 20 years of suffering. "You call slavery an inconvenience?" The Kamari fleet tried to fight, but like the Vorthak, they found their own systems turned against them. Worse, the other slave species that the Kamari had oppressed for centuries saw what the humans were doing and decided to join the rebellion. Suddenly, the Kamari faced uprisings on dozens of worlds as every enslaved population rose up at once. On the former mining world of Korveth, Minho stood in the ruins of the crystal mine where he had spent 15 years of his life. The Vorthak overseers, who had once shocked him with control collars, were now cowering in the same tunnels where they had forced humans to work. Please, begged the overseer who had tormented him for so many years. I was just following orders. I never wanted to hurt anyone. Minho looked at the alien's 4 trembling arms and remembered all the times those same arms had operated the shock controls. Following orders, he said quietly. That's what they all say. But instead of striking back, Minho did something the overseer didn't expect. He helped the alien to his feet. You're right, Minho said. You were following orders, and now I'm going to give you new orders. You're going to help us rebuild this place, not as a mine worked by slaves, but as a city where all beings can live freely. You're going to work alongside the people you once oppressed, and you're going to learn what it means to earn respect instead of demanding it. The overseer stared at him in confusion. You're not going to kill me? Killing you would make me like you, Minho replied. Instead, I'm going to give you a chance to become better than you were. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy as liberated humans faced their former oppressors. Some chose revenge, striking back at those who had caused them pain, but others, like Minho, chose a different path. On the entertainment world of Carnifax, the gladiator Jamin led an assault on the arena where he had fought for 8 years. The alien spectators who had cheered while humans died now ran in terror as the fighters they had treated as entertainment turned into an army of liberation. "Kill them all!" shouted one of the other gladiators, a man named Kyung-ho, whose sister had died fighting for alien amusement. "Make them pay for what they did to us!" But Jamin held up his hand. "No, we're not killers. We're liberators. Round up the arena masters and the betting bosses, but leave the spectators alone. Our fight is with the system, not with every individual who was part of it." Kyung-ho looked at him with confusion and anger. "They watched us die for fun. They cheered when humans bled." "Yes, they did," Jamin said sadly. "And that's something they'll have to live with for the rest of their lives. But if we become murderers, then we become the monsters they claimed we were." The liberation wasn't without its costs. Many humans had died in the fighting, and many more bore scars that would never heal. The children rescued from the breeding facilities struggled to understand a world beyond their cages. Some of the liberated slaves had been broken so completely that freedom itself terrified them. But everywhere humans went, they brought the same message. This was about justice, not revenge. They had come to reclaim their freedom and to ensure that no species would ever again enslave another. On the Silvani homeworld, Dr. So-Young walked through the streets of the capital city as a free woman for the first time in 20 years. The elegant blue-skinned aliens who had once owned her now looked at her with a mixture of fear and respect. "Dr. So-Young," called a voice behind her. She turned to see Master Veltar, the Silvani who had supervised her work for so many years. "What do you want?" she asked. "I wanted to apologize," Veltar said quietly. "I know it means nothing now, but I want you to know that I never understood what we were doing to you. I saw you as a valuable resource, not as a person. I was wrong." So-Young studied his face for a long moment. "You're right. It doesn't mean much, but it's a start." As the human fleets continued their advance across the galaxy, a pattern began to emerge. This wasn't a war of conquest or a campaign of revenge. It was something much more dangerous to the old order. It was a revolution based on the simple idea that all intelligent beings deserved to be free, and that idea was spreading faster than any army could march. The rebuilt Galactic Council chambers looked very different from what they had been 20 years ago, where once 57 species had sat in comfortable seats making decisions about other people's lives. Now representatives from those same species knelt on the floor with their hands bound behind their backs. Admiral Su Jin walked slowly around the circular chamber. her footsteps echoing in the silence. Behind her stood the survivors of humanity's darkest years. Minho, with his scarred hands from the crystal mines, Yunji, whose eyes still held the pain of what had been done to her in the breeding facilities, So Young, who had spent 15 years, pretending to serve while planning revenge, and dozens of others who carried the weight of 20 years of suffering. At the center of the chamber sat the judge's platform where the Galactic Council had once condemned humanity to slavery. Now Admiral Su Jin took her place there, looking down at the alien representatives who had once thought themselves humanity's superiors. "Representatives of the galaxy," Su Jin began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "1 year ago, you knelt in these same positions as prisoners of war. Today, you kneel as defendants in a trial for crimes against all intelligent life." The Vorthak representative, former High Commander Krell Vash, looked up with his 4 eyes, full of shame. "Admiral, we surrender unconditionally. We accept whatever punishment you deem appropriate." "Punishment?" Sujin's expression was unreadable. "Is that what you think this is about?" She gestured to Minho, who stepped forward to address the chamber. His voice was steady, but everyone could hear the years of pain beneath his words. "I spent 15 years in your mines," Minho said, looking directly at the Vorthak delegation. 15 years bleeding for crystals that powered your ships while you told yourselves we were too dangerous to be free. My hands will never be clean again. My back will never stop aching. But I'm not here for revenge." He paused and looked around the chamber. "I'm here to make sure this never happens again." Next, Yunji spoke for those who had suffered in the breeding facilities. Her voice shook with emotion, but her words were clear and strong. "You took our children," she said. "You treated human beings like animals to be bred and sold. Some of those children are sitting behind me right now, young people who had never seen sunlight until we liberated them. They don't even know what it means to have a family, because you stole that from them before they were born." She walked closer to the alien delegates, many of whom couldn't meet her eyes. "But those children are learning now. They're discovering what it means to play, to laugh, to choose their own path in life. And that's worth more than any revenge we could take against you." Dr. So Young was the next to speak. She stood tall and proud, no longer the broken slave, who had once bowed to alien masters. "For 15 years I built weapons for you," she said. "You thought you were making yourselves stronger by forcing me to work for you. Instead, I built weaknesses into every system I touched. Your own technology turned against you because you never bothered to understand the people you enslaved." She smiled, but it was a sad expression. "You could have had me as an ally. You could have learned from human knowledge and shared your own discoveries with us. Instead, you chose fear and control, and that choice cost you everything." Do Hyun, the spy who had spent 20 years gathering intelligence while pretending to be broken, stepped forward next. "I lived among you for 2 decades, he said quietly. "I saw your families, your children, your hopes and dreams. I learned that underneath. Your different skins and strange shapes, you're not so different from humans. You love your families. You want your children to be safe. You dream of a better future." He paused and looked around the chamber. "That's why what you did to us was so terrible. You knew what freedom meant because you valued it for yourselves, but you decided that only your species deserved it." Finally, young Haiwan spoke for the rescued children. At 22, she had spent most of her life in captivity, but her spirit had never been broken. "I don't remember my parents," she said simply. "I don't know where I was born or what my family name should be. You took all of that from me. But you know what? I'm not angry anymore." The chamber was completely silent as she continued. "I'm not angry because I've seen what humans can do when we choose hope over hate. I've seen former slaves help their former masters rebuild their worlds. I've seen enemies become friends. I've seen children who never knew love learn to trust. Again." She looked directly at the alien delegates. You tried to break us, but instead you taught us how strong we could be. You tried to scatter us, but instead you spread human ideals across the entire galaxy. Every world now knows what we're capable of. And more importantly, every enslaved being now knows that freedom is possible. When the testimonies were finished, the chamber fell silent again. The alien representatives waited for Admiral Su-Jin to pronounce their sentence. Many of them expected death. Some probably wanted it, unable to live with the guilt of what they had participated in. But Su-Jin's judgment surprised everyone. You expected us to be monsters, she said quietly. You enslaved us because you feared what humanity might become if we remained free. You were wrong about us then, and you're wrong about us now. She stood up and walked to the center of the chamber. We are not monsters. We are not conquerors. We are not here to build an empire on the ashes of yours. We are here to ensure that what happened to humanity never happens to anyone again. She turned to face the alien delegates. Your sentence is not death. Your sentence is not enslavement. Your sentence is education. Confused murmurs rippled through the chamber. Every species that participated in humanity's enslavement will serve the same term of service that you imposed on us. But you will not serve as slaves. You will serve as students. Su-Jin's voice grew stronger as she explained. You will learn what you tried to destroy. You will study human history, human philosophy, human science and art. You will work alongside the people you once oppressed, not as their servants, but as their partners in rebuilding what was broken. She walked closer to the alien delegates. You will help us establish new laws that protect the rights of all intelligent beings. You will assist in creating institutions that prevent any species from ever again wielding absolute power over another. And you will teach your own children why freedom is not something to be feared, but something to be cherished and protected. Hi, Commander Krelvash looked up with confusion. You're giving us a chance to redeem ourselves? I'm giving you a chance to become better than you were, Su-Jin replied. Just as humans became better than we were through suffering, you can become better through service. The Kamari representative, Trade Master Velkoth, spoke up. And if we refuse? Su-Jin's expression hardened slightly. Then you will remain prisoners forever. But I don't think you'll refuse, because deep down, you know that what you did was wrong, and you want a chance to make it right. One by one, the alien delegates nodded their acceptance. They would serve their sentence not as slaves, but as students learning to build a better galaxy. The final scene took place 6 months later, on the observation deck of the New Earth station, orbiting humanity's recovered homeworld. Admiral Su-Jin stood beside her mother, Captain Ji-Hai, watching as the first transport full of human colonists prepared to land on Earth's surface. The planet below was scarred from 20 years of alien occupation, but it was healing. The blue oceans still reflected the light of the sun, and green was beginning to return to the continents. They thought enslaving us would make us weak, Ji-Hai said quietly, her hair now completely gray, but her eyes still bright with determination. They never understood that hardship doesn't break humans, Su-Jin replied. It teaches us how to break the chains that bind everyone else. Around Earth's orbit, ships from dozens of species worked alongside human vessels. Former enemies were learning to be allies, former masters were learning to be partners, and former slaves were teaching everyone what it truly meant to be free. The galaxy had tried to judge humanity and found them too dangerous for freedom. Instead, they had learned that humanity's greatest danger was not their capacity for violence, but their refusal to accept that anyone should live in chains. And now, that dangerous idea was spreading to every corner of the galaxy, carried by beings who had learned that freedom was not something to be hoarded by the strong, but something to be shared with all who reached for it. The age of slavery was over. The age of true galactic civilization had begun, and it had been built on the Foundation of a simple human truth, that all intelligent beings deserve to choose their own destiny among the stars.